What's up? Good afternoon. You guys know what it is. You guys know what it's all about. We've got some Pro Football Focus data to take a look at here today. And I'm going to continue to reiterate what I try to say in every Pro Football Focus video I make. This is not to say that Pro Football Focus is always right, nor is it to say that they're always wrong. It's just looking at what they have, talking about it, comparing it to our perception, and moving on. So we're going to start with the offense like we always do. We're going to take a look at overall grades, and then we're going to take a look at some more narrow metrics and statistics from Pro Football Focus just to get a feel for how they felt about this game. So let's just start, like I said, with the overall grades. Before we get to that, please like this video. Please click the thumbs up button if you haven't already. Subscribe if you're new. Click the bell for notifications. Become a channel member for $2 a month. Those are the best ways to help support the channel. All right, let's take a look here. The clear winner on offense for the second week in a row, or second game in a row, is Jackson Smith. Jackson Smith and Jigba. 88.2 overall, and it pretty much all comes from the passing game. And at the end of the day, it's JSN. That's where most of it's going to come from. Although he did have a run, I think his first career run. And I guess they still kill him on run blocking, which it's going to be hard for JSN to ever become much of a run blocker. That would be difficult given his size and his strength profile. But yeah, we are getting more than enough from him in the passing game area to still feel like we're starting to see the player that we were hoping to get when we drafted him. We're starting to really see it. And Pro Football Focus, I think, has it right here. He didn't have a touchdown this week. I understand that. He didn't have the game that he had against the Rams, but he had a very, very effective game. And 88.2, those kinds of scores do not come around every day. And second place, and I got to talk about this too, because Oluwatimi, to my eye, was just okay yesterday. I didn't think he stood out in a particularly obvious way from what I was seeing from Connor Williams, but I thought he was no worse, and I was cool with that. For whatever it's worth, Pro Football Focus thought he was really good. They gave him almost an 81, mostly from run blocking. I want to say that. His positive grading mostly came from run blocking, which you're not going to feel that because we can't run the ball still. Our running game is still bad. So it is interesting to note that he got a really strong grade here. His pass blocking was just okay, but I'm down with okay from Oluwatimi. And Pro Football Focus would have you believe that this was much better than okay. This was actually a really good game. I don't know if I agree with it, but it is interesting to note they actually thought he was one of our best players. Also, Abe Lucas. And this is exciting because I thought Abe Lucas played a pretty good game. He gave up a sack. I don't know if it was his fault. He gave up some stuff. And obviously he couldn't play the entire game. But on a snap-to-snap basis, Pro Football Focus liked what they saw. 76.8. Good run blocking grade. Good pass blocking grade. They like what they see. So if that can maintain and that can start to translate into better actual statistics in terms of allowing pressure, we got something. Got a little something. Ken Walker up here as well. He's pretty much always going to be up here because he gets every yard he can get, right? Like Ken Walker, he's not going to have monster production on this team. It just can't happen. But he's getting what he can. He's doing what he can. And, his work is appreciated for sure, even if it's not resulting in monster numbers. And rounding it out is, of course, Geno Smith, which people are getting caught up on a few things with Geno Smith. But realistically, he made one bad throw yesterday. And then he led the team down for a game-winning touchdown with a couple minutes left. Not just with his arm, but also with his legs, which is something that we hadn't seen from him earlier in that game. So I'm pretty much in line with this. Not so sure I'm in line with this next one, though. Mike Gerald gets a 70 on the strength of his really good run blocking grade. Again, it's one of those things where it's really hard to give anybody on this team credit for good run blocking because we still can't run the ball. So I understand that there's probably a lot of plays where everyone does really well except for one guy, and then the one guy ruins the play. But it's hard for me to say Mike Gerald played good when his pass blocking grade is this low. And I do think that low grade probably reflects reality pretty accurately. So I'm going to have to definitely push back a little bit on the idea that he deserves a 70. But it's better than, I mean, he did play better than last game. Now, that's because he didn't play as much, and because last game he had a billion penalties, but he did play better, so that's cool. I mean, I like Gerald. I want Gerald to be the long-term answer at right tackle if Abe Lucas isn't, but clearly not ready. Metcalf, good grade here, pretty decent. Run blocking, he's still getting killed on, which is interesting, right? We now have a 10-game, well, for him, 8 games, where the run blocking just really hasn't been there. And yeah, I don't know what to say about it at this point. It's clearly a thing, and it's a thing that is not helping this team. But at the same time, it's hardly our highest priority when it comes to fixing this running game. Cross, average grade. Farrell Brown, just okay. We got some guys who only played 1 snap, so that stuff doesn't really matter. Charbonnet, about average, which I think is reasonable. I don't think he's doing anything necessarily wrong, but he's not doing anything right. Bobo, whatever, Lockett, whatever, and then you get down into some of the guys that they docked heavily. Cody White, 4 snaps, so even that doesn't mean anything. Same with Bobo, really. 6 snaps is not really going to tell you anything. The guys who really got beat up in this game would be Anthony Bradford, 52.9, and then you have the other guard, Laken Tomlinson. And finally, Pro Football Focus gives him a grade that I think reflects reality. I've been pretty off the Tomlinson wagon this year. I don't think he's good. And PFF has generally graded him well. And they did grade him well in pass protection, which is interesting. But his run blocking was so bad he couldn't outrun it. So what you're seeing here, according to Pro Football Focus, is really a couple of guys ruining what is otherwise really good run blocking. Tomlinson, Barner, and to a lesser extent, somebody like Bradford. Which, if that's true, then at least we're getting closer to the solution. Now, is it true? I'd have to go back and rewatch the whole game to really get a feel for that, I think. I was watching at a bar. But it is interesting to know that Tomlinson, after a game that I thought was relatively unoffensive, is actually getting dinged heavier than usual. And Barner, of course, there were a lot of reasons why I think he didn't play well in this game, and you can see that he got murdered in the passing game and run blocking. All bad, all really quite bad. He's young, and this shows why we need Noah Fant back, because Barner just can't play a full load at the moment. But he's heading in the right direction, and he's going places. All right, so that's it for the overall grading on the offense. Let's go to the passing chart for Geno Smith. You can see that in terms of the short game, the guy is absolutely on point. He threw 3 passes behind the line of scrimmage, and he threw a grand total of 16 passes within 10 yards of the line of scrimmage, and he was perfect. He was 19 out of 19, right? Yeah, 19 out of 19 on passes, either within 10 yards of the line of scrimmage or behind the line of scrimmage. And when you expand out beyond that, you start to get to some of the incompletions, which that's of course how football just kind of works. He has the interception over here on the outside left intermediate, and then you see the he goes 5 for 7 in the intermediate area to the middle and to the right. So overall, pretty good. And then he hits one big play to the outside left. I think that was the one to DK. And he only got 3 attempts deep down the field, so you can see them taking that away from him pretty well. And early in the game, he didn't have time to even think about taking shots. And later in the game, when he did, you did get to see a little bit of that. After Bosa got hurt, there was a lot more opportunities to hit stuff down the field. But the Niners did a pretty good job, I think, of taking it away from him. And Geno responded the right way. Hit it short. Hit the easy stuff. Hit the stuff in front of you and call it good. So I like this passing chart. Again, the middle of the field is getting featured a lot. Not as much as in some games. Like he had 8 short middle, and then he had 8 outside short. So not as much as usual, but still a good amount going on in the middle of the field. Rushing direction, I like to look at this every week just to get an idea for what might be working and what might not be working. And yeah, you can kind of see what the grading was talking about in terms of run blocking. The Seahawks had no success running the ball to the left side when they were running, when they were just running up A gap or B gap, or even really, I think you would call that C gap. Like running off left guard was bad. Running up A gap between the left guard and the center was really bad. And then you go over to the right side and you're like, okay, middle right. So that's the gap between, no, that would be A gap. And then the middle left would be B gap, I think. You have a little bit of success running the ball behind Olu and Bradford. And then you have a good amount of success, although only 2 attempts, running behind Bradford and Lucas. So this running game really is like whack-a-mole, right? Like you're trying to address one thing and then another thing pops up. So it's really kind of frustrating that we can't zero in on a consistent problem. But in this game, you can pretty clearly see why the running game was largely ineffective. And you can see the areas where it was at least a little bit more effective. And then you have things like quarterback scrambles skewing the numbers so they don't look that bad. But the actual natural running game of the Seahawks still needs to figure something out. And with Lucas back, maybe it's as simple as running the ball to the right side a lot. All right, pass protection stuff, not terrible. Obviously, we caught a break when Bosa got hurt, but this team has struggled against all types of pass rushes, so we needed something positive no matter what. And honestly, the standout lackluster performer in this area is probably Charles Cross. He gave up a sack. He gave up 4 total pressures. He got a barely above average overall grade. So I'm not saying he played bad, but this is not typical of what we've seen from Cross over the early part of the season. Still playing really good, still having a good season, but that was not a great showing for him. Other than that, nobody else was really getting lit up. Lucas gave up a sack that I think had as much to do with Charbonnet as anything else, and another QB hurry, but he played fine. 2 pressures and 28 pass protection snaps. I'm going to be cool with that. Charbonnet, by the way, doesn't get dinged for that first sack that Lucas allowed, which I don't really agree with. I think Charbonnet looked lost on that play. You've got Barner and Pharaoh Brown not giving up anything numerically, at least, and both getting graded out pretty well. Small sample size, though. Tomlinson gives up a sack and a hurry. So that's, I mean, you don't want that from your left guard, but at the same time, it's not something that's going to kill you. Bradford gives up 2 pressures, and that's it, which for him is actually really good. Now, that's obviously says a lot about Bradford that 2 pressures at right guard is good. Oluwatimi, 1 pressure allowed on 38 pass blocking snaps. So that's pretty much as good as you could hope, I think. And then Gerald gets dinged hard because he gave up a sack, gave up a hurry, and only had 10 opportunities. So that's actually really bad, even though the numbers itself don't look bad, admittedly. But right tackle is... hold on one second. Sorry about that. Had to go take care of something real quick upstairs. But yeah, Gerald, 10 snaps, 1 sack, 1 hurry. That is quite bad. But you can see that no one player really killed us here. And that's an improvement. And you can see that all 4 sacks on Geno Smith were attributed to a blocker. So they didn't say that any of them were on Geno, which that's something to always look for every week, I think. And finally, we got the run blocking stuff here, which doesn't necessarily tell us a ton about what's going on here. But one thing that I do like to look is the discrepancy between zone and gap runs, and you can see that we are running more zone than gap, not by a huge amount, but by an okay amount. And the thing that really stands out to me in this area is that Abe Lucas gets graded almost a 90 in his zone blocking runs, which were only 5. But what that tells me is that this is where things need to continue to gravitate, because you can also see Oluwatimi gets graded out pretty well here. Gerald actually got graded out well here. And even Bradford got a good grade on his zone blocking runs. All right, that's it for Pro Football Focus on offense. See you guys later with the defense. Go Hawks.